But it seems like every single day on television I'm talking about race, and sometimes I get so tired of talking about it. Can we move on?
And if you talk about it,
Hollywood is built on smiles, red carpets, and golden statues. But behind the scenes, the reality is far more complicated. For decades, Morgan Freeman has been celebrated as one of cinema's untouchable icons. Yet away from the spotlight, a very different story has followed him through sets, boardrooms, and interviews. There have been some deeply disturbing moments when Morgan Freeman left some colleagues feeling unsettled, and other moments when he himself felt betrayed, overlooked, or pushed aside. Some walked away in silence, some spoke out, and others saw their reputations tangled with his in ways they never imagined. The question remains, which names have stood on the other side of Morgan Freeman's calm voice? You'd be shocked to find out. A career marked by controversies. Morgan Freeman's career has spanned more than 5 decades, and over that time he's become one of Hollywood's most respected actors. His calm presence, commanding voice, and ability to bring depth to any role make him iconic. But behind the admiration lies a side of Morgan Freeman's public life that has drawn some serious controversy. In fact, his career is filled with moments that have forced both Hollywood and his fans to question the man behind the voice. One of the most significant controversies emerged in 2018 when CNN published an investigative report in which 8 women accused Freeman of inappropriate behavior. The allegations ranged from inappropriate actions to suggestive comments. While the descriptions varied, they painted a picture of Freeman as someone whose behavior made women in professional environments uncomfortable. Some of the women were part of production teams, while others were journalists or staffers working near him. For a man so widely admired, these stories caused an immediate public backlash. Freeman responded with a carefully worded public statement. He denied that he had ever intended to offend or cause distress, but he did acknowledge the seriousness of the accusations. He apologized to anyone who may have felt disrespected, while maintaining that the intent behind his actions had been misinterpreted. However, the response was neither a full admission of guilt nor an outright denial. It only reflected an awareness that the accusations, whether or not they resulted in legal consequences, had already altered the way audiences and colleagues viewed him. The fallout from the CNN report spread quickly. SAG-AFTRA, the actors' union that had awarded Freeman a Lifetime Achievement Award earlier that same year, announced that it was reviewing whether his award status should be reconsidered. Although the award was ultimately not revoked, the fact that the union even opened such a review spoke volumes about how damaging the accusations were to his standing in the industry. Freeman, once almost untouchable in reputation, was suddenly under the kind of scrutiny that few expected to see. The impact went beyond Hollywood. In Canada, TransLink, Vancouver's public transportation authority, pulled a promotional campaign that featured Freeman's voice. He had been the narrator for a Visa advertisement tied to the transit system. But in the wake of the accusations, officials decided his voice was no longer appropriate for the campaign. It was a symbolic moment. Freeman's voice, which had long been used to lend credibility and reassurance in commercials, documentaries, and public campaigns, was suddenly seen as a liability. But long before the 2018 scandal, Freeman's personal life had already been the subject of sensational tabloid stories. Perhaps the most damaging rumors involved allegations that he had engaged in an inappropriate relationship with his step-granddaughter, Idina Hines. Hines was the granddaughter of Freeman's first wife, and she lived with Freeman at certain points during her childhood and early adulthood. Gossip outlets circulated claims of a romantic involvement between the two, an allegation Freeman firmly denied. Hines herself also publicly denied the rumors, calling them fabrications that had hurt both her and Freeman deeply. Despite these denials, the rumor resurfaced in 2015 in one of the most disturbing contexts imaginable. During Hines's murder trial, Hines tragically passed away in New York City, and her boyfriend, Lamar Davenport, was the prime suspect. During the court proceedings, Davenport's mother made a shocking accusation that Freeman had been romantically involved with Hines. No evidence was ever produced to support her claim, and both Freeman and Hines had consistently rejected the allegation during her lifetime. Still, because the claim was made in open court, it reignited public speculation. further complicating Freeman's reputation at a time when he was already facing scrutiny for other matters. Freeman's controversies were not limited to personal allegations. In 2022, he faced backlash on the international stage for his decision to participate in the opening ceremony of the FIFA World Cup in Qatar. Freeman appeared in a scripted segment that emphasized themes of unity and connection, but his presence was quickly criticized. Human rights organizations and celebrities had already called for boycotts of the event, citing Qatar's record on human rights, particularly concerning migrant workers and the queer community rights. Stars like Dua Lipa and Shakira openly refused to take part in the ceremony, sending a message of disapproval. Freeman, however, took the opposite route and lent his image and voice to the event. The criticism was sharp. Many saw Freeman's involvement as lending legitimacy to a regime accused of widespread maltreatments. For some of his fans, it was difficult to reconcile his appearance in a celebratory role with the harsh realities reported by international watchdog groups. The decision reflected a pattern in Freeman's career: his willingness to maintain a global presence, even if it meant stepping into politically and socially charged territory. Although Freeman remains one of the most decorated actors of his generation, with an Academy Award, a Golden Globe, and numerous other honors, these controversies have left doubts in the minds of the public. Freeman's career has placed him alongside some of the greatest performers of modern cinema. He's shared screens and sets with legends, rising stars, and difficult personalities. Unfortunately, not every collaboration was smooth. In fact, Freeman has had some partnerships that left behind more tension than admiration. One of those experiences, in particular, involved an actor whose reputation for intensity often clashed with Freeman's own measured approach. Their time together on set revealed that even the most seasoned performers can find themselves in situations where respect and patience are tested. Alan Arkin. Alan Arkin was a Hollywood veteran long before he ever worked with Morgan Freeman. Known for his sharp wit, subtle delivery, and ability to balance comedy with drama, Arkin built a career across decades of film and television. He won the Academy Award for Little Miss Sunshine, impressed audiences in Argo, and left his mark in projects ranging from stage plays to television dramas. By the time he crossed paths with Freeman, Arkin was widely regarded as one of the industry's most respected character actors. In 2017, the two actors were cast together in Going in Style, a remake of the 1979 comedy about three retirees who plan a bank heist. On paper, it was the kind of lighthearted project that brought together seasoned stars for a crowd-pleasing story. But behind the scenes, an uncomfortable moment between Freeman and a production assistant drew headlines. According to reports from the CNN investigation, Freeman had allegedly made repeated comments and advances toward a young woman working on the production. What made this particular incident stand out was that it was not hidden or ignored. Someone spoke up in real time. That person was Alan Arkin. Some witnesses claimed that Arkin directly intervened on set, telling Freeman to stop. Arkin's response was described as firm, and Freeman reportedly did not continue after the confrontation. However, some rumors claimed Freeman didn't appreciate Arlen's comment. The fact that an Academy Award-winning actor of Arkin's stature felt compelled to step in showed just how serious the moment was. It also fueled the wider debate around Freeman's conduct when the story resurfaced during the wave of industry reckonings in 2018. But the tension between Freeman and Arkin stretched beyond this single incident. Years earlier, Arkin had spoken about losing a coveted role in the 1990 film The Bonfire of the Vanities. Arkin, known for his range and ability to inhabit complex characters, had been considered for a significant part. Yet, in the end, the role went to Morgan Freeman. The decision wasn't framed as a simple casting choice. According to Arkin, the shift came after the studio decided to reframe the character along racial lines. The role, originally written without race as a defining factor, was recast to feature Freeman in what was seen as an attempt to give the film a sense of balance and political correctness for its time. Arkin later described the change as unfair, not necessarily blaming Freeman personally, but pointing to the broader industry practice of making casting decisions based on market calculations rather than artistic merit. For Arkin, the incident was a reminder of how fragile opportunities in Hollywood can be, even for accomplished actors. Losing a role to another performer is common in the business, but in this case, the circumstances carried undertones of studio politics and image management. Freeman's gain was Arkin's loss, and while the two would eventually work together years later, the history of that casting decision reportedly created some tension in their professional relationship. When news of Freeman's alleged misconduct broke, the detail about Arkin stepping in gained extra weight. It was proof that Freeman's actions were not isolated or exaggerated accounts whispered years later, but moments that had been witnessed by colleagues with the courage to speak up immediately. And Freeman's history of strained relationships did not end with co-stars. Beyond the actors he worked with, there were people behind the camera who also saw the more complicated side of collaborating with him. One of those people was a longtime business partner who knew Freeman not only on set but also in boardrooms and executive decisions. Lorie McCreary. For decades, Morgan Freeman was not only an actor, but also a producer and entrepreneur, and at the heart of his producing career was Lorie McCreary. Together they co-founded Revelations Entertainment in 1996, a production company built around the idea of telling thought-provoking stories with social and cultural weight. Through Revelations, they developed documentaries, films, and television projects that expanded Freeman's influence beyond acting. McCreary was not simply a business partner. She was an industry heavyweight in her own right. As president of the Producers Guild of America, she became one of the most visible women in Hollywood leadership, advocating for better representation and ethical practices within the industry. On paper, the Freeman-McCreary partnership appeared strong, a collaboration that blended Freeman's star power with McCreary's organizational and creative skills. But like many long-term professional alliances, it was not without tension. In fact, their relationship became part of the public record when Freeman's alleged misconduct spilled into their working environment. One of the most striking incidents occurred during a public panel event. Freeman reportedly turned his attention to McCreary's attire in front of an audience and made remarks that were widely characterized as sexist. According to accounts later reported by CNN, McCreary was visibly uncomfortable as Freeman commented on what she was wearing, turning what should have been a professional forum into a moment that felt inappropriate and personal. McCreary reportedly later described the episode as shocking, pointing to the fact that she was caught off guard. Surprisingly, the panel moment did not remain an isolated embarrassment. Instead, it resurfaced during the broader 2018 CNN investigation, where it was cited as one of several examples of Freeman's tendency to cross professional boundaries. What made the story more disturbing was McCreary's stature in the industry. She was not a junior assistant or someone without influence. She was a respected actress and leader, running both a successful production company and a major Hollywood guild. If someone of her status could be publicly undermined in that way, it raised questions about how Freeman behaved toward those with less power. The CNN report also included claims that McCreary herself had been less than supportive of women within their company. Several former employees alleged that she made dismissive comments about women who had families, suggesting that motherhood was incompatible with the demands of the entertainment industry. These accounts painted a more complicated picture of the workplace culture at Revelations Entertainment. While Freeman faced scrutiny for his alleged behavior toward women, McCreary was accused of creating her own brand of hostility that affected female employees trying to balance their careers with personal lives. For Freeman, the controversy involving McCreary showed that tension existed even in his closest professional circle. Unlike co-stars, with whom he might work for a single film and then part ways, McCreary was a long-term collaborator, tied to him by years of business decisions and creative ventures. When her discomfort became part of the public conversation, it suggested that Freeman's behavior was not limited to isolated encounters but could appear even in environments where trust and respect were supposed to be foundational. It was no longer only about actors he disliked working with or peers who challenged his behavior. It was also about someone who had been his closest ally in the industry, a partner who, at least in one very public moment, had to endure behavior the public found inappropriate. And if his history with McCreary revealed how even trusted collaborators could be unsettled by his actions, his relationship with another figure showed an entirely different kind of tension. this time involving a much younger star whose unpredictable reputation collided head-on with Freeman's steady Hollywood image. Lindsay Lohan. Lindsay Lohan's rise to fame was one of the fastest and most dramatic in modern Hollywood. She entered the spotlight as a child star in The Parent Trap, delivering a performance so natural that audiences were convinced she was destined for greatness. By the time she appeared in Mean Girls, she had become a pop culture icon. Her charisma, comedic timing, and screen presence placed her among the most promising young actresses of her generation. At the height of her career, Lohan was considered not only bankable, but also the kind of performer who could define a cultural moment. But as quickly as her star rose, it began to collapse under the weight of personal troubles. Lohan's life off-screen soon overshadowed her performances. A string of arrests for driving under the influence, multiple stints in rehab, and constant appearances in tabloid headlines turned her from Hollywood's golden girl into one of its most infamous cautionary tales. Film projects became increasingly difficult to secure, not because of a lack of talent, but because of the chaos that seemed to follow her wherever she went. Productions reportedly struggled with missed call times, courtroom dates, and the mounting cost of insurance when her name was attached to a project. Against this backdrop of controversy, a story began to circulate that placed Morgan Freeman's name alongside hers. According to a report that circulated on fan forums and entertainment gossip sites, Freeman was said to be among a group of A-list actors who had placed Lohan on an informal "do not work with" list. The rumor claimed that these veteran performers had advised studios and production teams to avoid casting her due to her erratic behavior and the disruption she caused on set. The idea that Freeman, known for his reputation as a consummate professional, might have privately warned others about working with Lohan spread quickly. It fit neatly into two existing narratives: Freeman as the actor who valued professionalism above all else, and Lohan as the starlet whose unreliability had made her a liability in Hollywood. In this way, the story took on a life of its own, passed around online as though it were fact. Although no official confirmation ever emerged from Freeman himself, the gossip has persisted largely because it aligns with what many already believed about both actors. Lohan also never publicly addressed the Freeman rumor. At the time it spread, she was still trying to salvage her career, and responding to yet another negative headline may have felt counterproductive. Instead, she focused on smaller projects, making appearances in independent films and reality television while attempting to rebuild her reputation. In recent years, she has staged a modest return to acting, including a starring role in a Netflix romantic comedy that marked her most significant project in years. And while the truth of the rumor may never be verified, its persistence remains proof of the lasting impact of Lohan's troubled years. Even as she works to reinvent herself, the shadow of her past follows closely behind, reinforced by whispers and speculation about what the most respected names in Hollywood might really think of her. Freeman also had an experience with another actor whose erratic behavior he didn't approve of: Christian Bale. Christian Bale has long been recognized as one of the most committed actors of his generation, a performer willing to transform his body, his mind, and even his personal life for the sake of a role. From his chilling performance in American Psycho to his Oscar-winning turn in The Fighter, and most famously as Bruce Wayne in the Dark Knight trilogy, Bale built a reputation as an actor who would stop at nothing to deliver authenticity on screen. His devotion to method acting, however, has also made him one of Hollywood's most polarizing figures. Bale's perfectionism has earned him respect, but it has also sparked controversy. The most notorious example came in 2009 during the filming of Terminator Salvation. While shooting an emotional scene, a crew member walked into his eye line, distracting him at a critical moment. Bale exploded into a profanity-filled tirade, berating the crew member for several minutes. The incident might have remained a private embarrassment if not for the fact that the audio was leaked to the public. The recording went viral, sparking headlines, late-night comedy sketches, and even remixes that mocked the actor's meltdown. The backlash was swift, and Bale eventually issued a public apology, admitting that his behavior had been inexcusable and that he had let his intensity get the better of him. Although Morgan Freeman had nothing to do with Terminator Salvation, He did share a stage with Bale in Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight Rises. Behind the scenes of the Batman films, Bale's intensity was once again noted by those present. He approached the role with the same uncompromising focus that defined his career, but not everyone appreciated the atmosphere it created. According to multiple rumors, Freeman, who played Lucius Fox in the trilogy, reportedly disapproved of Bale's temperamental style. Freeman's preference had always been for calm, collaborative environments on set, where professionalism was maintained without unnecessary conflict. And the contrast between Bale's fiery method acting and Freeman's measured approach to work was difficult to ignore. Insider reports later described a noticeable coolness between the two actors during tense moments. Although there was no public argument or confrontation, and neither man ever spoke about it openly, the sense of distance between them was visible to those who observed the production closely. For Freeman, whose reputation had been built on reliability and composure, Bale's volatility represented the kind of behavior he quietly disliked. And for Bale, consumed by the demands of his character, Freeman's calm detachment may have seemed like a different philosophy of acting altogether. What makes the tension noteworthy is the way both men handled it publicly. Freeman never criticized Bale in interviews or public forums, proving that whatever private disapproval he may have felt about Bale's temper, he chose to keep it professional and separate from his public comments. Still, the perception of tension between them persists in industry accounts, speaking to the larger question of how different acting styles can collide on set. Bale embodies a school of thought where immersion and intensity justify even extreme behavior, while Freeman represents a philosophy grounded in steadiness and mutual respect. Both methods have produced unforgettable performances, but when placed together, could result in intense tension. While Bale has since taken steps to rehabilitate his reputation after his Terminator Salvation outburst, the memory of his temper continues to shape how people view his collaborations with co-stars. But that's not all. Freeman has also found himself in the midst of another tension that unfolded not on a film set, but in the middle of a high-profile media investigation. Lorie Melas. Lorie Melas was not a household name when her path crossed with Morgan Freeman's, but within entertainment journalism she had already built a reputation as a sharp and determined reporter. Working as a CNN entertainment correspondent, Melas covered red carpets, interviews, and the stories that shaped Hollywood's public image. She also had a background in performance herself, with acting credits to her name, which gave her an unusual perspective when dealing with celebrities. Her connection to Freeman began at what should have been a routine press junket for Going in Style in 2017. At the time, Melas was pregnant, and during her interview session, Freeman allegedly directed comments at her that she described as inappropriate. According to her account, his remarks left her shaken and uncomfortable, turning what should have been a straightforward promotional interaction into something far more personal and troubling. Rather than let the moment pass, Melas pursued the story. What followed was a 6-month investigation that stretched far beyond her own experience. Working alongside other CNN reporters, she interviewed dozens of people who had interacted with Freeman across different projects and professional settings. By the time the report was published the following year, 8 women had come forward with accusations ranging from inappropriate actions to suggestive remarks, with many more corroborating the atmosphere they described. The exposé became one of the most widely discussed entertainment stories of the year. Freeman, once considered almost untouchable in reputation, suddenly faced an avalanche of scrutiny. Companies pulled advertising campaigns that featured his voice, the Screen Actors Guild reviewed his Lifetime Achievement Award, and headlines across the world debated whether his carefully built public image had finally collapsed. Freeman and his legal team did not accept the CNN report without resistance. His attorneys accused the network of journalistic malpractice, claiming that the piece had been constructed unfairly and selectively to cast Freeman in the worst possible light. They demanded a retraction, arguing that the report blurred the line between alleged misconduct and misinterpreted comments. However, CNN stood by its reporting, and no retraction was ever issued, leaving the allegations to stand as part of Freeman's public record. For Melas, the story was career-defining. She became known not only as an entertainer, but also as the reporter who challenged one of Hollywood's most respected icons. This incident marked the beginning of a permanent shift in how Freeman was perceived, regardless of the absence of formal charges. And while Melas's investigation brought Freeman's behavior into international focus, another Hollywood insider and journalist also played a role in amplifying and contextualizing the voices of women who spoke out against him. Her interactions with Freeman were less about investigative reporting and more about what unfolded during interviews that were supposed to be professional. Tyra Martin. Tyra Martin, an entertainer and producer in Chicago, was no stranger to interviewing celebrities. Over the course of more than a decade, she built professional relationships with countless actors, directors, and musicians. Among them was Morgan Freeman, whom she interviewed repeatedly during his promotional tours for various films. Their interactions were familiar enough that Martin came to expect Freeman's light teasing and occasional flirtatious remarks, which became a recurring part of their exchanges. Some of those comments eventually became central to the public debate about Freeman's behavior. In clips widely circulated after CNN's 2018 expose, Freeman was seen giving Martin inappropriate remarks. In fact, when she asked about how he was enjoying bachelorhood, he reportedly responded with, "I am enjoying bachelor life immensely. I get to look at you and drool." These remarks seem to reinforce the allegations that Freeman had a pattern of crossing lines during professional interactions. They were quoted alongside more serious claims from other women, creating the impression that Martin had also been a victim of unwanted advances. Surprisingly, Martin herself pushed back against that framing. When the CNN report spread across headlines, she clarified publicly that her relationship with Freeman had been mischaracterized. She explained that she had always felt in on the joke during their interviews and did not view his comments as harassment. In her perspective, the playful banter between them had been mutual, and she believed the network had misrepresented her words by placing them in the same context as other, more troubling allegations. Although her comments seemed to support Freeman, the damage to his reputation had already been done. As a matter of fact, her response complicated the narrative. On one hand, it showed how differently individuals could interpret Freeman's behavior depending on the situation and the nature of their relationship with him. On the other hand, it raised questions about journalistic framing, whether every example included in the CNN investigation carried the same weight, or whether some anecdotes blurred the line between genuine misconduct and awkward humor. Martin's clarification did not erase the other allegations, but it showed that not every account fit neatly into the same narrative. For those who had worked with Freeman over the years, it was a reminder that his interactions were complex and sometimes contradictory, depending on who was on the receiving end. But Freeman's awkward interactions with his fellow Hollywood insiders have left audiences with a more complicated understanding of the actor. And to date, he's remembered as an industry icon whose legacy is now as much about the tensions and contradictions surrounding his behavior as it is about the films that made him famous. Which other actor do you think should be on this list? Drop your answers in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen like this video and subscribe to our channel for more updates.